This is ASM host number 7, and you are listening to Parleydome. Joining Dano Villano, Victor Nero, Johnny Martinick, and myself is special guest Sean Beesley of iconic Toronto band Die Blind and Live Evil Productions. This episode is filmed poolside, so pardon the excess bird chirping and enjoy the show. Now we've got Sean, who's in the mix, joining our little circle here.
Hello, Sean.
Hello.
Circus.
Hey,
Sean.
how's it going, guys?
Good.
So let you guys all introduce yourselves.
Sorry.
You guys can all introduce. whoever.
Okay. Hi, I'm Victor. Nice to meet you.
Hey, I'm Dano. Good to meet you.
And I'm the token Winnipegger, Johnny.
I'm Sean Beesley. And what would I say I am? Nothing terribly special. I tinker with sound.
That's pretty special.
Tinker is like underselling it a little bit.
I produce music, remixes, play music, DJ, fiddle with videos, and call them art and so forth.
Groovy.
Excellent.
I actually just checked out the new Die Blind video. That was amazing.
Thank you. That was a labor of love. It's I don't know. It's a bit of a story of my life. So it kind of got rewritten about 18 times.
Wow.
While putting it together. I don't know how. I think I almost exhausted Envato's footage. I don't know whether you guys use Envato or not, but yeah, you start to see yourself going, "Hey, wait a minute, haven't I already seen this?" And I don't know, that's something to talk about at some point too. The content of that particular song, the faces, you guys are talking about work and all the different interactions, back at work, non-work, so forth. All
We
the
were actually
faces
talking about aliases a few minutes ago as well. I think that was before you joined.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we all have we've got some experience with them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty much it. It's a huge topic in my mind. How much time do we spend working on our various personalities and faces, whether we admit that we do it or not, for whoever it is we're seeing? And is it healthy?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are living in persona now rather than actually living. And I mean, there's a time and a place for that, absolutely. And personas can be wonderful and very useful, but some people are kind of doing it 24/7 now.
Well, I don't think that's anything new. I think that it's all relative to who you're around. Because an ex of mine used to say that at any given time, whoever he is or who he presents is a direct reflection of who's around him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, we're all going to be a little bit different with our family than we are with our friends, and but now we live in this day where we have literal personas. We have internet personas and work personas.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and
how many?
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry, guys.
No, go on.
How many people lose themselves though? Through all of these personas, even without the internet and so forth. And it's been with us for a long time. How many people lose themselves? What part of those things are actually them, and what is actually the projection of what the other person wants to see?
Yeah,
that's a good point.
I mean, sometimes the person you create can end up becoming more real than the person who created it at times, and that kind of trying to think.
Literally just happened to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the story of my life, essentially. But it's interesting. And you see a lot of people now just, with the social media stuff, they're living in persona 24/7. Mm-hmm. And it's the method acting goes a little too far, and you end up with a little bit of the Heath Ledger syndrome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, even on a macro scale, work, 400 days straight of work and all kinds of so forth. If you love it, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But what about the idea of the faces that we put on? Because we're getting getting kind of programmed in the idea of working for 40 years to save money and acquire for a mythical day in the future where we don't have to, if we have hips and knees, and if we even survive that long, and we give ourselves these benchmarks that every 10 years of what you should have accomplished, that we can get all anxiety about and pop some pills to try and address that, to try and carry us through to our mythical day. And it's like we're all kind of putting on faces for what's being expected about those things. We should be upset about this, or anxious for this, or trying for that, and a lot of it seems kind of like everybody agrees to put on the show, kind of like believing paper or digital money actually has value if you're holding it in your hand or looking it in your bank. I don't know, it's like we're all kind of agreeing that What do you think?
Deciding on an agreed collective value of things that may not really have the value that it
Exactly.
does.
Yeah, we're an interesting bunch that way because I think we're all a little bit naturally outside of that stream, and we were talking, like the three of us here, Nero, Dano, and I work together in our day job as well, and it's a very unorthodox day job to begin with, but then also the way we manage it is very unorthodox. So we don't kind of feel like we don't have to put up deal with the same paradigms in a way.
Yeah. I don't have to put on I mean, I'm working remotely, talking to maybe one or two people a week at the most. So for me, I don't have to put on the mask and do the little dance like I've had to do for a lot of jobs. Having done mostly service and retail in the past, where there's a lot of mask wearing. But yeah, it's and I mean that's something again that not having to do that, being able to hey, I'm not having a great day today, but I can still go to work and do the job, and there's no extra steps required to get me to that point.
It's a different life, eh?
Yeah,
like when you make that switch.
Yeah, well, it's just I could never go back. I could never ever go back to having to please everyone and serve that many masters. And I've always said freedom is not how many things you own, how much money you have, your accomplishments. To me, freedom is serving as few masters as possible and answering to a small number of reliable people. And really, I only answer to like 2 or 3 people if that in a week, and one of them's me.
There you go.
And that's a very lucky and privileged position that I thought I'd never get to have. I see so many people out there, their idea of freedom of success is literally just, you get to a certain level of success in certain industries, you start answering to some very powerful people, all of a sudden it becomes a poison chalice. Particularly you look at like publicly traded companies, if I had a successful business, no matter what I did, I would never go publicly traded, because once you start answering to shareholders, they do not care about anything but the money. And you can get voted out of your own company.
Yeah, I was in that world for quite a while. Yeah, it's nasty.
Not for me.
Did you find or any of the group that made that kind of transition out of that? Did you find your first year or two almost difficult?
I never got into that world. I was always somebody who lived outside of the box, so to speak. I mean, I was a single mom, and before that a stay-at-home mom, and then I went right into university, and pretty much from there it's just been very fringe industries and fringe world, and so I've never had to do that transition, so I don't really I was the type that I had a job at a bagel shop, and the guy called me stupid once because I didn't mop the floor the way he wanted. I think I lasted a week before I walked out, and I was just like, fuck you, buddy. Like I've never been able to kind of deal with that intellectual abuse that comes with a lot of those jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yep. I found it difficult, actually. I mean, I had kind of different circumstances due to health and so forth that, forced that transition. But I found it had a startling, I didn't expect it at all, but a startling kind of negative impact with, psychologically and anxiety and so forth, because you get so programmed into your routines and what you're doing. It's almost like on a weird subconscious level. As much as you wish you weren't there, you start to go after a certain number of days without those, even though they're negative routines. It's like you start to have a reaction to it. You feel like everything's wrong, even though you're not having to deal with it.
Yeah, a lot of the time the negative routines are more addictive than the positive ones.
Oh yes,
particularly when you're younger and you don't think that there is anything better. You have a couple of crappy relationships, you think all relationships are like that. You have a couple of crappy jobs, you think everyone's miserable at work, until you actually find someone that treats you and respects you the way you should be. Then all of a sudden you realize you're just kind of slumming it before that. And sometimes the hardest part is learning to accept that, and to accept that you are worthy of that. For a lot of people, that's the biggest bridge to cross.
I think routine in and of itself is a security blanket.
Yeah.
Like you said, whether it's a positive or negative routine.
Undoubtedly. That just is amazing when that starts to dawn on you, right? Because or at least for me, it started when I started realizing that I was looking for these routines that I hated. So that was odd. So it took quite a bit of time to kind of replace them, because there's 20 years of routine, but it's like deprogramming yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really, really strange. And it's because you're not just doing it from your small routines from every day, you're doing it like in an entire paradigm shift. Like deprogramming yourself from this kind of indentured servitude type thing, where you have to do this. If I don't do this, everything falls apart. I lose everything and whatever. And that's the irony there, is that you are encouraged that you're more successful with the more quote unquote things that you acquire and whatever levels you go to. But the more you do that, the more you're burying yourself under these things that you're afraid of losing. So you have to do the circuit more, it's if you were conspiracy minded, you'd almost say it was on purpose, but it's this cycle you get sucked into.
Well, it's like the Fight Club principle, the things that you own end up owning you.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for me, I've never been able to have an overly materialistic life because I made the choice basically to be an uneducated immigrant. So I knew that, one, I don't know for sure where I'm going to be living in my mid to late 30s. That wasn't something that was really guaranteed until earlier this year. So I can't, go and own a home and buy a boat. Not that I could afford any of these things with the kind of work that I do anyway, but, I had to move away from that superficial stuff. And it's been interesting trying to explain to some of my more economically unaware boomer friends and relatives about why certain things are just not possible, not viable, and seeing how they're prisoner to these things. And, a choice like owning a home in your 20s might seem liberating then, but it might keep you prisoner for 40 or 50 years afterwards.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I've kind of had a philosophy of, less is more, and be somewhat minimalist with my possessions, at least up until now, where I can actually
nimble.
start planning for future. Yeah, I need to be nimble because I need to be able to pack all that stuff up in a suitcase and move if need be. Luckily that's not the situation now, but for a while there, I mean, I lived in 10 different places in 2 years, so it keeps you on your toes.
Well, I have some sympathy for that. I came to Toronto when I was just 18. I finished my last exam in high school and got on a GO train with a hockey bag full of clothes and never came back. I was, your street punk, Queen West by Much Music, Panhandler, and all that kind of stuff.
Right on.
Yeah. It was quite the experience. But there again, still amazing the difference in people and the way minds work, because I still know people that are still right there, and it's been like 40 years.
Yeah.
Where did you stem from?
I came from Durham, North Durham. Obviously you're probably familiar with Pickering. North of Pickering, the airport property. I don't know whether any of you are familiar with it. It was land expropriated by the federal government in the 50s to build a second international airport. And they kicked all of the owners out. And essentially it was like government housing, same as you would have in any kind of urban area, but it was all out in the country. And I grew up there. And I didn't particularly like it because I was the different kid. Yeah, well, I had a very, very religious family. Both my grandfathers were pastors, and my mom considered herself a bit of a fashionista. So I'm out in, we'll say, very rural. Everybody's wearing rugger shirts and rugger pants and rock shirts, and my mother's dressing me in designer jeans with lightning bolts on the ass, guaranteeing that I'm going to get the shit kicked out of me every day, right? But I wasn't the biggest fan. There were some things
we touched down on that in one of the previous Parleydomes. We all kind of immigrated in a way, to Toronto, and all had the same experience of like finally finding that freedom to be individual and
exactly.
But I think that was part of the conversation we had before, was that not everyone feels the need to do that. So it's like there was already something in all of us that kind of made us want to search the world for something bigger and better, right?
Yeah. I mean, usually it can be positive, it can be negative, but
even somewhere in your head.
I used to say that. I used to say when I immigrated to Toronto from Old Country, which is Sault Ste. Marie, because in the Sioux, growing up as a kid, playing in punk and metal bands,
Mhm.
a lot of other people, like, it was so cliquish that, like, people wouldn't give you the time of day. They'd exclude you from festivals. Bars wouldn't hire you. They'd take one look at you and be like, okay, bunch of poor guys, But then I move here, and next thing you know, after a few years, I'm in a band. Next thing you know, hi, we're a record label. We want to sign you. And I'm like, man, this never would have happened before.
Right?
But here's the other thing too. Like, just going back to the whole work situation. I worked a lot of corporate jobs that dangled carrots in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got out of that, I started working more physical jobs. But at least I was always around rock and roll and entertainment.
Yeah.
Whether it was being the bouncer, whether it was being Michael Myers in a haunted house, or whether it was loading in bands down at the Budweiser stage. It didn't matter. At least I was around that atmosphere. But with our current job now, for me, the biggest payoff though, and like we were saying earlier, it is not exactly a mainstream thing that we do. But the fact is that I feel appreciated, which means more to me than anything. And it's like the pressure that's put on me, I'm putting that on myself. And I put a lot of pressure on myself. And so at the end of the day, it's like, okay, you know what? I put all that pressure on myself. That was on me.
Yeah.
I didn't have anybody so, to me, it's a big deal. And, as far as the whole public persona thing, 10 years ago, I was a crazy, hard drinking rock and roll werewolf. But, nowadays, I tell people, well, I'm kind of a jingle writer for ASM. and I'm more than happy to do that because, it's the pressure that I put on myself.
Yeah.
It's not like somebody said, okay, kid, you're going here.
Yeah.
This is the department,
That's exactly it. That feels great because when it's your own pressure, it's great because you're accomplishing something for yourself. The effort you're putting in is for you or something you're passionate about, right?
Exactly.
It's not to get you through the day to get to some mythical benchmark that's supposed to tide you over to the next one. It's your own passion, right?
It's amazing being able to set your own pace.
Absolutely.
Because I've always worked jobs where I'm Sisyphus. I'm pushing a boulder uphill to roll back down to the same place every day, and I can deal with that. But when it's self-guided and the pace is set for me and the goalposts aren't being moved every 20 minutes. I mean, some days the goalposts do get moved. It's the nature of the job, but very rarely. And it's not going to cost me 5 hours or 5 days to fix that problem. And that's an amazing thing to have. And when I said I worked 400 days straight during the pandemic, and then I tell people it was voluntarily, their heads explode. But at the end of the day, I close my laptop, my job's done. I work from home, but I wouldn't be taking anything home with me.
Absolutely. I totally get it. Because funny enough, my big switch was right around the start of the pandemic as well. And I don't know that I probably would be less than 10 days that I've not worked because that's just what I do. I don't feel like I'm working. Like I'm in the studio every day from, about as long as it takes to make coffee after I wake up until like 3 or 4 in the morning. Right. And, 16, 18, whatever hours a day. But it doesn't feel like work because I'm doing what I love, creating and all those kinds of things. And I help a lot of people. It kind of became my passion to kind of try and change an industry that's probably almost impossible to change, but it's still what I want to do. So that's, it's a big thing, but slowly but surely, hey, why not?
You've been listening to the Parleydome. We're really excited and happy that you decided to join us and listen to us regale stories of our pasts and what we plan for the future. And there will be more as long as you listen, and you will listen. It's good